Scott McNair, injury attorneys, we fight for the win.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Overruled podcast brought to you by the Scott McNair Law Firm. I am David McNair, and Brad's not here. I think he's in the French Quarter celebrating Mardi Gras earlier. We are the Friday before Mardi Gras, which is even more of a thanks that I have for this incredible guest today. We're blessed to have Mr. Paul Ballard in the studio today to talk a little bit about him and his family's businesses and a lot of the different growth that they've had over the years. Paul, thank you so much for being with us today.
No, thanks for having me. It's kind of wild in the city today, and it's a good day, good weather. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I got to get started off with, if you're like listening and you're like, who is Paul Ballard? The first obvious thing is you are the owner and are now the primary owner and have been for many years of PJ's Coffee. Is that right?
Yes, me and my family.
Can you take us way back to the beginning? Because as I understand it, Paul, you and your wife actually met at Tulane and started working at PJ's, and that's the genesis of how you became the owner. Can you kind of take us through that journey?
Sure. Yeah, we met. And my wife, Torry, when I met her, I was not a coffee drinker, but she would go to PJ's and get iced coffee, and which, wherever she was, I started going. And she got me drinking iced mocha, and that was kind of our routine. We go run in the park and go to PJ's. And, it became a kind of a routine, which we still have today. Like,
nice.
After 32 years, we that's kind of our thing. We try to get coffee in the morning, and so it all started at Tulane and college.
And I think from just chatting with you a bit before we started the show today, as I understand it, the lady who started PJ's, who y'all bought it from,
Yep.
was she was actually one of the genesis of iced coffee. Is that right? Can you kind of talk us through that?
She's amazing. Her name is Phyllis Jordan. She lives uptown, and she was the founder. She was from the Midwest, came to New Orleans, and started selling coffee in the French market. And it was back in the 70s when some of the specialty coffee kind of started percolating, if you will, around the country.
No pun intended.
And and she was in New Orleans. She became kind of the flag bearer of specialty coffee. New Orleans had already obviously had its coffee, its French roasted chicory, its beignets, etc. But she brought that origin-based coffee that, was really being drank in Europe only, because post-World War II, coffee in the United States had kind of deteriorated from her point of view, and a lot of folks,
right?
Because it was based on commodity and price and just volume maybe. And so she was part of that, not unlike wine, where
right.
you just, there's some good wine and then there's some commercial wine. And she really took to the coffee part.
Well, and I think you can definitely tell. I mean, I was sharing with you earlier. I had I lived in Lakeview for many years, and I had a PJ's problem because I'm just not saying it because you're here. The only reason I love PJ's coffee, like you can taste the quality of the bean and the quality of the. I just get plain coffee with like almond milk with a couple of stevia in it. So I'm like having coffee, not like a whipped frappuccino with pumpkin spice whatever in it type of thing. Like. But you can definitely tell the quality, which I suspect derives from her and y'all focusing on the quality of that product over the years. Is that fair?
Yeah, we have a really rigid, kind of process of how we buy the coffee. That upper 1%, we buy those best beans, and then the roast profile is really, really important. And I think that's where where we really excel, because she's a micro palate. My wife actually has a micro palate, Torry too, where the taste buds are just pretty high and intense. A lot of your chefs, even the ones in our city, the James Beard folks, they have a micro palate that really just sensitive and can pick up all those flavors. Well, she built that roast profile back in the 70s.
Wow,
that's still there today, and so that's actually part of our obligation is make sure we stay consistent to that, and so we don't waver from those profiles. And so that way you can, when I go to PJ's, I'm going to expect this kind of thing to hit the back of my roof of my mouth, you know, the right way.
And when you say micropilot, I'm assuming you mean, I don't want to make the wrong assumption, that
I don't even know if
they're very
technically a term,
good at like tasting the intricacies of a good coffee bean and how the coffee tastes. Is that fair?
It kind of comes alive for Phyllis and Torry, and you can kind of tell folks, if you're around people that just have a high sense of taste, and they can pick out all the different flavors. It's one of the things that she happens to be known for.
Well, I think you own one of the biggest coffee brands, at least in the South, so you can make the word micropalate up if you want.
Yeah, I mean, it's a word that I use all the time. I'll probably get corrected now that it's out here. I'm not in front of the camera very often.
But even if it's not a word, I like it. I'm starting to use it now. In researching for today, Paul, I was blown away because I knew PJ's had grown and was a successful coffee and now franchise. Mm-hmm. I believe the website said 175, but I think we were talking before. You said 182 locations. It's insane. Talk to us a little bit about where did it come from when you and your wife took it over, your growth journey from however many locations there were back then to now 182 locations. That's crazy.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
Something you should be really proud of.
No, it's been a great journey. I mean, technically, I guess we started 30 years ago in this kind of journey with PJ's. We graduated from Tulane. Torry worked for admissions. I actually went and did a little stint in financial planning after college for a year and worked at PJ's. And we, at the time, I think they had about 5 or 6, maybe 7 PJ's. And they were starting to market.
Were they all in New Orleans at the time, Paul?
Yeah, basically. Okay. There was one going to open in Hammond.
Okay.
There was one in Mandeville, which is where it's where our training facility is now. For franchising. Okay. So the original franchise on the North Shore was there too, but I think we were store number 8, let's say, 1995, and so not many. It was just a
8.
few.
You had 8 in 1995.
We were. Our first store was store number 8.
Okay, gotcha.
So there was like 7 stores open, and so we were like store number 8.
Gotcha.
So it was under 10.
How is what's the journey been like going from 8 or 10 to 182?
It's been wild because I was young and energetic and optimistic. It's one of my things is I'm always hopeful, and I look at the positive side. But I remember kind of even all the roads, like Starbucks actually was a West Coast brand at the time in the early 90s, and we were doing our thing in New Orleans and they were doing their thing, and obviously they staged pretty well. They scaled very well. I remember pre-Starbucks out of the West. It's been a great journey. Like, I remember telling somebody what a cappuccino is, which you normally don't have to do that now,
right? Or
a latte. And so the education, we were part of that education. What is good coffee? What is cold brew? It's come a long way.
Stuff that just happens now, right?
Yeah,
people know what cold brew is or a good cappuccino is. Yeah. It's funny, we were chatting offline a bit about Reginelli's because we just did this Reginelli show. Yeah. And it's a similar growth journey or story for the Reginelli family because when they opened, there's now in New Orleans, we have all these great pizza places, right? A lot of New York style pizza, a lot of quality pizza. But back when they opened, it was like a couple of pizza joints and nobody really knew what good New York style pizza was, similar to what y'all have kind of experience and really explain to people what these quality products and types of coffees that y'all offer are.
It's been fun to be a part of.
How have you handled, obviously going from 8 to 182 locations is a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
And earlier you spoke about the quality of the product and the taste profile and how serious y'all are about that, and I could tell when you talked about how serious you are about it. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the quality control and how have you done that? I'm always amazed when a company like yours gets as big as it has, but it allows quality control measures to be in place to make sure that the customer, no matter which location they go to, has the same quality product and experience. How has that been challenging? Can you share some stories about that if possible?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is that consistency, right? And I do feel like we're pretty. We nail it pretty good on the beverage side because it starts with a good bean, and then the beans need to be fresh too. So that's a thing too, right? Like distribution into the cafe to the customer. How fast does that happen?
Right.
That's a big deal. And then how it's presented, right? The filter system of your water in the cafe. How are you doing your brews? It's always a lot of work. I think we've created systems that make it consistent and simplify it to a degree where we can stay consistent. But yeah, that's always your biggest challenge. And then, ultimately we do different products like baking and food. Those are challenges always. How do you get food prepared and out too, unrelated to the beverage side?
Yeah, I'm always amazed every time we have a guest or a friend of mine who's in the restaurant business, and I talk about how the challenges we face in growing and running the law firm. I'm like, but we don't have cost of goods sold, and we don't have product that goes bad, and we don't have distribution challenges like y'all have, which is a really big challenge, right? Like that you're overcoming, because if you don't manage your product, that could be a big problem for the company in achieving any type of profitability.
Cost of goods, obviously, in restaurants, that your sales, and then you got real estate, right? How expensive is your rent? How all of those factors, come into the gumbo, if you will, of whether the store is viable or successful. Well,
just being down here, I think it's really cool and proud that we have a company like PJ's, which headquarters in Covington, local company that's now 182 locations. How many is it? 8 states that PJ's is in? Or
I think we're up to 15 now.
Oh wow!
And we have really some nice growth. I would say if you want to visualize where we're really kind of prominent, it's I call it the SEC, the Southeast. But Maryland, New Jersey, we have a lot of brand recognition thanks to Tulane and Loyola, and obviously New Orleans being a very popular tourist attraction city. So we're up the East Coast, really growing. Our fastest growing market right now is Texas.
Oh wow!
So we're in all cities in Texas, clustering. And really, trying to anchor in. And, Houston, we have a lot of brand recognition in Houston, as you can imagine.
A ton of Louisiana
because we go back
Houston.
and forth.
Yep.
So that's a lot of fun.
And y'all are in Alabama, too?
We are.
I guess even Alabama's fans' money is growing.
Oh, I know. And we actually, former football player for Bama, opened a PJ's
really?
right in front of the stadium. That location is a lot of fun because it's popular. And,
wow!
And they love it.
And that's got to be part of a good partner to be with, right? In different geographic regions, is if you're with a local person who's trusted, it helps your brand association and visibility in breaking into that new market. What are the future goals for PJ's, and kind of where do y'all stand as far as like in the? I mean, Starbucks is, I guess, probably, I'm just guessing, maybe the biggest national
they are the biggest
company. But where is PJ's in that, and what are some of y'all goals and where you see the company going? Yeah,
I mean, truly, I don't really put a lot of limits on us. I'm a bit of I think we're going to be right there. We could be second brand globally. I mean, we have locations in Vietnam. Oh, we have locations in the EAU, in Kuwait. So I love the international part. We're looking in England, Liverpool right now with some developers. So that you kind of get a little idea of where my mind is. Part of my story is I grew up here in Metairie. And I lived around Al Copeland, and I remember he had the big lights at the lake and in my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And I remember he started Popeyes. Yep. And so that actually filtered into my mind as a kid, like if he could do that, I mean, why can't we? And so I'm impressed with, Popeyes, their global traction. And that is a brand that came out of New Orleans. Same with Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Same with Smoothie King with the Kunos, who we were franchisees of them in our 10 years. So I think there's a lot of brands that come out of New Orleans that, why not us, right?
100%.
And so that's kind of how I think.
I love the way you said that, because one of the things I've been really reading about and talking about is mindset. Yeah. And so I love that just seeing Al Copeland succeed and seeing what he was able to do with his company was a great example for you that, like, why not you and your family's company being able to have the same type of success and growth that he did. Yeah. And really what I find is a lot of times a business owner's worst enemy can be himself or herself and their own limiting beliefs, instead of saying, hey, what can I achieve? Why not me? Right? Has that led to some of your success, do you think? And some of the company's success is y'all willingness to work on yourselves and your mindset and saying, hey, there's no limit on what PJ's and our company's brands could go to.
I agree. I do. We talk about it a lot. In order to scale, you got to have great systems. You got to have, like, for us, we have to have a great franchise base. And so one of the things in that sales process, we try to find that fit for the culture. I think Chick-fil-A is a good one to study. Yep. They have been able to layer their culture. In-N-Out Burger is a great example because, they focus on ops, but they also focus on what they do really well. Todd Graves, more recent, with Cane's,
yep.
And very impressive with what he's built in his situation. So, I don't think there's any limit. And then once you hit that mark, I remember when we hit store number 100, we celebrated for like 1 second, like a half an hour.
It's like a Nick Saban celebration. Right, you get like a half an hour to party and then get ready for next week.
My dad played football for Bowden at Stanford University, and I remember he was friends with Bobby and Coach Bobby, and Bobby Bowden won that first national championship, and they asked him, how does it feel? And he's like, it feel really good if I can get that second one or something like that. It's just it's a natural, it's just a natural feeling, okay, good. We achieved that goal. Let's keep going.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned just now a little bit about like the values or the foundation of the company kind of mindset and what y'all talk about internally. And researching for the show today, I was kind of drawn to Miles and Reese, I see jumping up back there when you're talking about Chick-fil-A, because they hear me talking about Chick-fil-A all the time as far as how incredible they are in hospitality and service consistently across the board. I hate to like hit their food, although I think their food is really good. I always say I don't think they have the best chicken, but like it tastes a lot better because of how well they treat you, right? And the hospitality you feel. And in researching Ballard Brands, which is the parent company, right, of most of the companies that your family owns.
It is.
I was drawn to the fact that y'all really highlight your core values on your website, and hoping you could talk a little bit about those and how that has played a role in y'all's success over the years.
We our goal is to bring the flavors, spices, and hospitality to the world from New Orleans. And at the time, if you notice about Ballard, where that kind of evolved was I opened Wow Cafe in 2001. And then we bought PJ's after the brand. So we were the largest franchisees of PJ's, and then we bought the brand.
Gotcha. About
19 years ago. And so we had owned Wow before, and we're franchising that. And so then we had these two brands, and we decided we need to kind of build just a kind of an infrastructure of here we are with multiple brands. And so we're a portfolio company at that point. And so building the team and the culture around those core values of, one of our personal values is, obviously, treat people the way you want to be treated. And the way, in the relationship of a franchise community, what is important is you're in a partnership with that franchisee. And so it is important to realize that, it is a system, it is a brand that brand standards, et cetera, but it's also a partnership. And by us being franchisees first, for Phyllis, and then we were franchisors with Wow, and then ultimately franchisors with PJ's, and then now Ballard Brands being the kind of the parent company. Steve, Scotty, and I and our families, we want that sense of family. I think we draw from watch the Chick-fil-A families, and see how that is done, and maybe that's something that we can layer in as we continue to grow, and then and just try to layer that. We got people that have worked with us for 23 years.
Right.
And our partnership is 23 years old.
Yeah. So, the way I kind of look at it and think about it and listen to you talk about it is you're kind of taking a risk, right? When you take a franchisee on, because they are an extension of your family and the values that you have. So like if the relationship doesn't start with a similar mindset and core values, then the way they behave and act, irrespective of profitability, affects your brand.
That's right.
Right? And that's important to you because you have worked so long to build it.
What I've learned, and just in my own experience, is it is a system that needs to have, you got to follow the system, but then you're still liable and you're still going to own your own business. So you have to be passionate. And the best ideas, when I was younger, I worked for McDonald's when I was 15. And I learned that Ray Kroc, got a lot of his ideas from his franchisees. And so I still do believe that today. A lot of our best ideas do come from the franchisees. Mm-hmm. The deal with a good, solid franchise, though, and we talk about some of these brands that we've talked about, is to make sure that you are consistent with what you offer, and you do have to have enough openness as a parent to understand that new ideas are coming, but then also know that the relationship is, hey, but this is how we're going to do it, and be consistent with that, so that your experience uptown is the same experience, in Metairie.
I think that pretty much sums up a lot of why y'all have been so successful, in my humble opinion, because a lot of times I think with businesses that I see that fail, stagnate, or struggle, irrespective of the industry, it's the arrogance of the owner and their inability to control their own ego, and the idea has to come from them. Right. It's like there's good ideas everywhere. Like it doesn't have to be yours. If it helps the team, take the idea and help it make the company be more successful. Now I think I want to jump to WOW because I didn't know that you had started WOW before y'all bought the brand of PJ's, and that y'all were I had messed up the timeline and getting ready. But WOW also, in preparing for today, y'all in 20, I didn't realize how big WOW was either, which I think was a big passion project of yours and something you're really proud of. You should be really proud of. In 20 states, can you talk a little bit about how you started WOW and how that's grown?
Yeah, it's funny because Torry and I, my wife, worked the counter at PJ's, and we had, I think, 3 stores. And then we had a Smoothie King with my brother Scott, and they were living in North Carolina, and they were growing the Smoothie King brand, and Torry and I were growing the PJ's brand. And I just got this notion to open a place because during college, I've always worked. So I worked at Rosie's Big Easy on Chapatulas during college, and we would do wings at midnight, and
good time for wings.
Yeah, and I was part
of. There's no Taco Bells downtown.
And I was part of the group that would cook the wings and go put them out at midnight, and everybody, like, the place would fill up because they knew wings were coming out, free wings at midnight. And I think that was just in my head. And my wife likes to say, I was ready to shoo him out of the PJ's because we were working in the same shop, and then we had a couple kids at that point, and so she's amazing because she's conservative in her risk taking, and I'm a little bit, I fly at 50,000 feet a little bit.
It's a good balance.
It is a great balance, and the respect is there. But I remember saying the idea of what I wanted to do, and she was like, I like it. Oh. Yeah, I like it. And so that gave me wings to kind of. So
then you were like, okay, if she's in, then maybe I got something I'm working with here.
True story. Nice. And it was great. And so the process, to this day, honestly, to make a brand up it is definitely something I'm very proud of and happy and just glad I was able to do. And it was a great process. My buddy George Rode was my original partner. He was the chef for Al Copeland. He was also a chef for Paul Prudhomme at Commanders.
Oh, wow.
And Chef George Rode. And he's a dear friend. So he gave me that culinary arm. And it was great. And we opened, and and the brothers decided to move home. And so it was like, hey, let's grow this brand. And so that was great. We opened the second store within like 4 months, and then we were just kind of off to the races with the Wow brand. And it grew, and we've actually, had different levels of success here and there as it related to launching that brand. But where we've really settled on, and really where we're thriving in year 22, I guess, is we're in non-traditional campus settings throughout the country. And we're doing very well in those non-traditional settings. And it kind of reminds me of the evolution of Chick-fil-A, actually, where they were in malls.
Yeah.
And they were in malls for 30-plus years. And then they went to the street. And so we intend to get to the street again, but we also are in, as you said, 25 states. We're on the West Coast. We're in the East. We're in the on different college campuses, and that's a fun brand. I'm excited about that brand.
So where was the first Wow location?
Wow, first location was Highway 190.
Okay.
Over by the Tulane Primate Center in Covington.
Okay.
And it was a little 1,100 square foot spot. And it was a lot of fun.
And now it's in that many states. Unbelievable. Is your vision, or what you thinking for the future of that company to eventually go back to the streets and get it to the streets and retail, kind of like so that evolution of. I mean, I remember, now that you're saying it, I never really intuitively thought about it, but I would always used to associate Chick-fil-A with like campuses and malls.
Yeah.
And now I don't anymore, and they're all over in street locations. So it kind of just hit like a light bulb when you said it, that I didn't even intuitively piece all that together in my head. But that was kind of, I guess, their evolution. Is that you thinking a similar thing for Wow's path?
Exactly. We're very proud. Obviously, we're at Tulane University for many years. I think 17 years, and I think we're the number one restaurant there on campus still. But the consumer, it loves Wow. When they experience it at a college, so we have different pockets all over the country that we have strong brand recognition, and the intention is to make sure we get the right model for the right time. And I think with the tech stack stuff and the some of the way that these stores are operating when it comes to quick service restaurants, I think we've got a model that we're going to be launching hopefully at the end of 2025 that will be able to go to the street again. And it will not have, one of the things about Wow that folks in New Orleans might recall and like is it was a small, like it had a little bar on it. Yep. You had wings, you had you had your games on the TV. It was kind of had a sports bar atmosphere. It's evolved now where it's more quick service, no alcohol and that kind of thing. It's more quick serve, and but I love the menu that we have now. If you go to the website, I call it the greatest hits. You got the Sonoma wrap and all the things that everybody knows and loves about us are there. Just a little bit more efficient, more easier to get. All the different delivery services, smaller menu than we used to try to carry. So yeah, it's been evolving.
Well, I know, just like as a native South Louisiana, and it gives me a lot of pride to have like a local family who's behind such large brands as Wow and PJ's, and two really rapidly growing companies, which is great for our area in South Louisiana. Talk a little bit, if you could, about the challenge or the juxtaposition between like the attention that each of those two little babies need, PJ's and big babies now, all grown up, that Wow and PJ's need all of your attention and focus. How's your family at Ballard Brands balanced the time and energy to each company's growth? That's
a great question, and quite frankly, that is the challenge, right? Is how do you own a multi-portfolio company as a privately owned company? We've always just been us three as the owners. in the last 20 years. You know, and you add resources and things to the areas and focus for both brands, you know, at the same time, and the bandwidth, I call it. We use that word a lot. What's our bandwidth? How are we going to be able to get it done? And that is a challenge for both brands because we're fortunate. We've so entrepreneurial because we've done other things too. And
right.
You know, we got a list. It might be in the you know, in your research that, you know, it's so we have a tendency to look at other things too, and so but these two brands have been resilient,
right?
And very much in 2025, my brothers and I are very focused and excited about these two brands specifically. Yeah.
Is it fair to say, Paul, that like that could be a challenge, but also a strength, meaning that some of the distribution relationships you may have on one side can be leveraged to benefit the other company and vice versa, and some of the things that you learn in each can be leveraged to help each company's growth? Yeah,
and I think, you know, maybe because it's where we live, maybe it's because our parents were in business and were entrepreneurs. One of the things that seems to be a theme with us is diversification.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, you do it, anybody does it at their home, you know, whether you're doing your stock portfolio. And we tend to have maybe done that. It's like, okay, that's great, but we're not going to, we got 3 families. Right. We're not going to put all our eggs in this basket.
For sure.
And so there's a little bit of that maybe happened throughout the years where the diversification was also, you know, it protected us too in some ways.
And so the family, like obviously PJs and WOW are the 2 main stars of the show.
Yeah.
We've been talking about them. But as you mentioned, y'all have a lot of other portfolio holdings and other businesses that y'all are involved in, which I found to be remarkable. And getting prepared for today is a lot of stuff. Can you like briefly just kind of walk our listeners through some of the other stuff that y'all do or have done?
Yeah. You know, my brother Scott is you know, he's amazing. He I guess it was about 12 years ago, we got an opportunity to do some contract feeding. We certainly had, you know, catered stuff, you know, when we have our storms and things, and we kind of backed into some of that where we kind of scaled up for some of those things back in the day, you know, post Katrina, and then the subsequent things that have happened, BP and stuff. So we had a division within the restaurant like stuff that would do catering, but we took a chance in the Montana areas and in the different the kind of the gold rush for that fracking gold rush or whatever. We became a food provider for an entrepreneur that needed food for like a man camp. And that kind of got us kicked off, and Scotty kind of started with that. And we have a team that's still today, it's called Ballard Logistics, and we do contract feeding, and we take on big opportunities, you know, and bid on them and stuff. So that's a division that, you know, he's super passionate about and does a great job. And then, you know, we bought in 2018, they were in a reorganization, Chef Jose Garces out of Philadelphia. He's an Iron Chef, and he James Beard Award winner. Great restaurant portfolio, and we bought that in 2018 with a partner, and that has been an interesting experience and very exciting from a learning perspective. But we just sold that business this past year, and it's got a great brand called Amada, which I think is going to be it's going to be $1 billion brand. Quite frankly, it's an amazing. It's his James Beard Award, and Chef Jose is much like Phyllis. He's an amazing talent, and some of the chefs that we are friends with here in New Orleans and all, you know, along that line of vein of I'm just in awe of creative people.
Right.
And so that was a great experience. We had Village Whiskey, which you'll probably see in cities soon. So it's been fun to exit that and then put our attention more to PJs and WOW now in 2025. And then, I think that's most of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's it.
Bring you up to speed.
Y'all have been just a little busy.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on from all that, I want to do a little quick segment, if you will, called Overruled. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and if you overrule it, you don't agree with it. If you sustain it, you do. Do you understand the rules, Paul?
I think I do.
All right, let's go. Overruled. You ready?
Okay.
All right. Cold brew is better than hot coffee. Overruled or sustained?
Sustain means yes, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Sustain.
Okay, so you prefer cold brew?
Yes.
Even in the winter, do you drink the cold brew?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I'm yeah. It is.
I love cold brew.
It's a necessity. It's
Especially
like actually part of my diet, and I have to have it. Yeah.
We have the worst freaking summers, so like in the summer, cold brew is like a lifesaver.
Yeah.
Okay, overruled or sustained, ranch is better with wings than blue cheese.
Oh, I like them both. I would say sustained. I'm a ranch maybe first. Very close. I like them.
It is a close one.
Yeah. I like ranch though. I'll probably lean to ranch. Sustained.
All right. Last, and I know this may be a bad question, but because now you pulled something, I don't know that. Does WOW still have a bar in it?
We do have a couple.
Okay.
We're in a couple campuses that have bars. If you know, like the kind of the old Rathskeller at Tulane and stuff. So some of them are WOW with a little bar and yeah.
Okay, so it's still a good question.
Yeah, there's some.
WOW beer is better draft or in the bottle?
Oh, a draft.
Draft. Okay.
Draft.
That's
I'm a
probably
draft
it.
guy.
That was I gave you a layup there.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Paul, I was hoping because all the success that you've had and your family's had, I was hoping you could maybe talk about maybe 2 or 3 of the primary. I know you probably got a lot. Like I know for me, just running this law firm for 9 years, I got a lot of mistakes and a lot of lessons I've learned over the years. But if you could maybe share 1, 2, 3 primary lessons you've learned over the years of this rapid expansion of both PJs and WOW, like what are some of the lessons you've learned that have led to your success in growing these companies?
I will continue to say, listen to your gut more. Continue to listen to your gut, but also, I think you do need to have. I think you need to have the numbers accessible quickly, especially in our industry. You need to know where you're at because there's so much vulnerabilities based on headwinds of competition, but more so just different ebbs and flows of human behavior. So I don't know if that answers the question, but having data has been really a big part of where we're headed. Yeah,
I love both those. I mean, I read something, I guess 2 or 3 months ago, where it was colloquial, where people used to be like back in the day, like trust your gut. But now there's like scientific research that says it's not, or medical and scientific, that it's not just a cliche or a saying. It's actually a medical thing that is signaling to your body that you have a true intelligent instinct in your brain that's telling you something.
That's interesting.
And so I'm a big believer in that. It's usually, it may not be what your gut's telling you, in my opinion, necessarily 100%, but it could be giving you like a warning or giving you a feeling that's something you need to think about. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I do think you have to then take data or whatever and try to overcome, maybe the feeling, and then you can override it. But you definitely need to listen to it.
Mm-hmm. And I love the lesson that you shared about data. A lot of times I'll argue with some of the lawyers here because in legal, it doesn't seem like you can data distill everything down, but we're really growing our data here at the firm a lot, and I fundamentally believe that you can. And data is, for me, on a day-to-day basis, it becomes like an indica of something that may be broken that we need to catch instead of catching it 3 months later. Right, the data in real time is telling you, hey, we're missing too many calls, or hey, we're not signing these cases fast enough. Hey, we're not getting back to clients quick enough whenever they need us to call them back. And so all those data points can tell an operator and an owner in real time, like, here's a problem, let's get on it now, instead of 3 months down the line when a lot of damage has been done.
Yeah, and what just popped in my head was, an example of that is, and I feel like COVID created some complacency, let's just say, in a lot of folks, right? So you have a way of how you want to go about your day and your work-life balance, and those are all real things that everybody's striving for. But, somewhere along the way, there was kind of like a moment where, let's just say you grab the data and the data says X, and then you say, okay, but we want to be this. And then we're like, do you have more in you? Can you get this done?
Right.
And as an individual, I'm talking about myself, I'm talking about our team. And so that is where that combination, and it's kind of exciting because when you realize, okay, well, this is what it says. Okay, now let's act. And by the way, I do think, myself included, people are happier when they are setting goals or are obligated to an expectation.
Right.
And so that's what we're in the middle of right now, even in our company. In 2025, I've referenced 2025 a lot. It's a big year. We're coming out of an exit of a sale, and then we're going into, oh my goodness, what do we got here? Let's just try to let's look at all these things.
I also think data too, not to go drone on about data forever. People are like, I'm turning this podcast off. What the hell did I sign up for? But it can also, I think, besides team members wanting to set goals, including me, including you, any owner of any company, right? We all want to set goals and achieve goals. Like data, I think we also all want to know a certain answer.
That's right.
And like a lot of times when there's something going on in the business that's not necessarily working, or a lot of people have opinions, which are good, but not necessarily all based in data. They can be emotions. Like the data can help your team cut through the emotion and get to a fact.
That's right.
That can help everybody then move forward towards what they're trying to achieve for the organization as a whole.
Spot on.
I don't know if you agree with that.
Oh,
or not.
totally.
You look like you do, so I'm feeling pretty
I have
smart.
a feeling we might have lost a couple people along that line, but yeah,
Like if these two
I am
dudes
right in the pocket on that one.
If these guys don't shut the hell up about data. All right, let's talk about your superpower, Paul. All right, I want to know if there's one thing. Obviously, we have billions of people on this earth. Everybody's unique. Everybody's different. But there's obviously something about you that's helped you be a key leader of your family's company to achieve this success. If you could say, hey, this is my one superpower that I think has really helped me leverage one of my unique talents to enable our company to grow, what would you say that is?
I would say the optimism. I've always seemed to feel that it's going to be okay and it's going to be all right. And so that, when, you tackle risk,
Yep.
it's like I have more optimism than I have pessimism, and then I just think that served me well. In a weird way, I can make decisions too. Interestingly, and it's funny. I call it sometimes because I'm in a partnership with three of us. And I call it the bureaucracy. Sometimes my decisions are like, wait a second, I got to put this to a vote.
Yeah.
But that's probably healthy.
Yeah.
Because you got to work through and stuff. But I would say optimism.
Well, it's also probably that optimism, I guess, is probably like a part of your mindset, right? And it's not, you're not operating from a place of fear and making decisions from a place of fear.
That's right.
You're seeing growth and opportunity and positivity. And that, I think, is a great example of one of the things that's helped y'all grow these two companies to be as big as they are, Okay, before we let you go, because I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I don't think people would listen to us talk about data for 2 hours. I would love to know if you could give us one of your favorite books, either all time or something you read recently that you thought was impactful. It can be a couple if there's a couple you want to talk about. But I think, somebody who's listening to this who doesn't get a chance to listen to a successful business owner as you would like to just glean, hey, what's some of the things he likes to read?
More recently, I'm a history major. And so I was marketing and history. So I actually like a lot of biographies and people. I'm very interested in leaders, and it's just something that it's just very. I just read recently the Lincoln book. I forget the author, but it was the kind of the quintessential Lincoln book that's out. And what's neat about him is my dad is from Alabama, and
Sorry about the Alabama fan comment
no,
earlier.
no. I guess technically he may have been an Alabama fan. He is definitely Tulane LSU.
There
now,
we go. All right,
'cause that's where all the kids went to school. But he came from humble beginnings, and so did Lincoln. And you being a lawyer, I being a history major, all of my friends are lawyers. So I did not go to law school. I went to open a coffee shop. But
pretty smart decision.
Yeah. What I love about Lincoln is his humility, and he was very successful in litigation. Right? He's had a lot of courtroom time. He spoke well English language, etc. Even though being a farmer. And comes out of, humble beginnings, farming, and then finds his way as the president of the United States, and probably the best president, in my opinion, that we've ever had. And he wasn't anything special, but he was really special. Mm-hmm. And so I like the idea that you can always continue to learn. And continue to be kind of what you want to. So that whole story it's just really neat to me. And I hope I'm not sounding like super up with people here, but I think that's an American dream, and I'm certainly patriotic that way. Let me add this too. Just a couple days ago, I was with some friends, and they're English, and they came over, well, English and Irish, and I was hanging out with them, and these are first generation U.S. from Ireland and England, okay? And they were telling me, and one guy was 70, another guy, late 60s, and they were telling me, and I'm fresh on this, hearing this story, why America's so special.
Wow.
And it wasn't a political discussion. It was more about their story of why they're here and why they're optimistic. And so so you're asking me about Lincoln, all of a sudden here I am about how great this country is. But that's...
Well, I think too. I shared with you before we started. Lincoln's one of my favorite. I have three really: Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, and George Washington. But I don't find it I don't find it to be a coincidence that you relate to Lincoln, because Lincoln had like an unending level of optimism and resiliency. I mean, if you look at his profile, he lost just about every electoral race that he ever ran for. I'm like, what the hell made this guy think he could still be the president? He just kept running, and became one of the best presidents we've ever had, in my humble opinion, too, as along with yours. So great discussion, and I couldn't agree more. I like Teddy because I just love Teddy too. He's a contrarian, and he was such an outdoorsman. And
he finished that speech with a bullet.
A bullet in him. I think
how do you not like that?
I think he had it in him for an hour and a half. I think it was like he had a bullet in him for an hour and a half and kept talking.
What'd he say? I'm a bull moose.
Yeah.
I love him too, and obviously George Washington. My wife is from actually Lambertville, which is right on the Delaware River. So I'm right there with you on all three of them.
Awesome. Well, Paul Ballard, thank you so much for being with us. Normally when we have a small business owner and guest on the show, I talk about, hey, tell everybody where you can find them. We'll put you down in the show notes. If you live under a rock and you can't find Wow or PJ's, they're everywhere. So check out, obviously, PJ's. One of my favorite coffee places in there, all over the city and the South. Incredible coffee brand owned by an incredible local family, along with Wow. Thank you so much for being with us today. And as always, thank you to all of our guests. This has been an incredibly interesting and fun discussion, talking about PJ's Wow and the Ballard family and their history of success, and as a local family here who's grown an incredible business, an incredible family and people. Thank you all for listening. This has been the Overruled Podcast, brought to you by the Scott Vicknair Law Firm. We will catch you next time.
Scott Vicknair, injury attorneys, we fight for the win.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.